The launch of the Edmund Fitzgerald, the morning of June 7, 1958, broke cool and bright over the Great Lakes Engineering Works in River Rouge, Michigan. Shipyard whistles screamed through the fog, and crowds of families, welders and shipfitters gathered along the water's edge to witness the birth of a new giant of the lakes, the SS Edmund Fitzgerald, a 729-foot ore carrier destined for the cold, iron-rich ports of Duluth and Thunder Bay. The air smelled of steel, grease and wet paint. Flags snapped against the breeze, while the ship's massive black hull gleamed, still streaked with the morning dew. Near the bow, a red-haired young woman, Margaret Fitzgerald, niece of the ship's namesake, held the ceremonial champagne bottle. Her hands trembled as the band struck up "Anchors Aweigh." When the bottle smashed, foam sprayed across the hull and the crowd erupted in cheers. Slowly at first, then with mounting speed, the great freighter slid down the greased wooden ways, hitting the river with a thunderous splash that drenched the front row. Water surged high, gulls scattered, and a deep, resonant horn sounded. The Edmund Fitzgerald was alive. Captain Henry Carlson, chosen to command her maiden voyage, stood on the pilot deck with a mixture of pride and awe. He had spent 2 decades hauling ore across Superior, but never before had he seen a vessel of such power and grace. Inside the pilot house, dials gleamed and the scent of new varnish filled the air. The engines rumbled to life, 7,500 horsepower of steam-driven strength. That afternoon, she made her first slow passage down the river toward Lake Erie, flags flying, band still playing from the pier. People lined the banks to watch her go, their reflections rippling in the wake. The Edmund Fitzgerald was not just another freighter. She was a symbol of post-war pride, of industry and family names that would echo across the Great Lakes for generations. As the sunlight glinted off her bow, Captain Carlson whispered to his first mate, "She'll ride these waters for 50 years or more, mark my words." None could know that less than 2 decades later, on a storm-torn November night, her name would be written in the dark ledger of Lake Superior's ghosts. But on that day in 1958, under blue skies and brass music, the Edmund Fitzgerald was nothing short of magnificent, a newborn queen of the inland seas, setting forth into history. On November 10, 1975, Lake Superior felt wrong from the moment the sun came up, if you could even call that grey smear a sun. The SS Edmund Fitzgerald, all 729 feet of steel, groaned softly as it pushed through the leaden water. In the pilot house, Captain Ernest McSorley watched the weather reports with the quiet focus of a man who'd seen a lot of bad water and lived through all of it. Below him, the ship was loaded deep with taconite pellets, iron ore bound for the steel mills. The Fitzgerald was a familiar sight on the Great Lakes, proud and powerful, known as the Queen of the Lakes, not long before. But that morning, titles didn't matter. What mattered were the numbers coming in over the radio, falling pressure, rising winds, waves building hour by hour. The gales of November had arrived. By afternoon, the lake was no longer just restless, it was savage. Waves slammed the Fitzgerald's bow with the force of small collisions, sending spray over the pilot house windows as if the ship were plowing through liquid glass. Each impact shuddered down to the keel. Dishes rattled, light fixtures swayed. Metal complained in long, low groans that traveled through the bulkheads like distant thunder. In the galley, a few crew members tried to eat, one hand gripping their plates, the other wrapped around coffee cups. The smell of strong coffee fought with the sharp tang of diesel and cold, damp steel. "Feels like she's riding different," one of them muttered. "Storm will pass," another said, though the look in his eyes didn't match his words. They all knew Superior was different, the deepest, coldest of the Great Lakes. It had a reputation. Storms here weren't just weather, They were something almost alive. Through the storm, another ship, the Arthur M. Anderson, kept uneasy company with the Fitzgerald, trailing behind and trading weather updates and position reports over the radio. Voices crackled through the static, captains measuring distance, speed, and the invisible teeth of the storm. Late in the day, the weather went from bad to brutal. Snow squalls swept across the lake, cutting visibility to almost nothing. It was as if someone had drawn a curtain over the world. 1 second the horizon was there, the next it was swallowed by whirling white. The winds screamed over the deck at near hurricane force. Waves climbed to heights that turned the huge freighter into something small, something that could disappear behind a wall of water. On deck, water came on in mountains, racing along the length of the ship, testing hatch covers, slamming against the railings. Every wave that broke over the Fitzgerald added weight, pushing her lower in the water. Each groan in the steel seemed just a little too long, a little too strained. The Fitzgerald's radar began to fail, then come back, then fail again. On a night like this, losing your eyes was the last thing you wanted. In the wheelhouse, Captain McSorley remained composed, but even his calm was starting to crack around the edges. "We're taking heavy seas," he reported over the radio. "We've lost a rail, some vent covers. We're taking on water." There was no panic in his voice, just a grave understatement that spoke of experience. On the Anderson, they listened in silence, the men understanding just how bad things had gotten. The Fitzgerald altered course, trying to hug the relative shelter closer to the shore, hoping the land would break the worst of the waves. But in a storm like that, shelter was a generous word. Darkness fell early, but the storm had already made the day feel like night. The sky and water blended into one heaving, howling void. Lightning flickered somewhere inside the snow clouds, turning the waves momentarily into jagged mountain ranges, then snatching the light away. By early evening, the Fitzgerald was in serious trouble. She was listing riding lower than she should. Some of her hatch covers might have been damaged. Some on the Anderson suspected that icy green water was finding its way into the cargo holds, turning heavy ore into something even more deadly, shifting weight deep inside the ship. Over the radio, the Anderson called again, checking on her. "How are you making out, Fitzgerald?" crackled the voice. "We are holding our own," came the reply. Simple words, calm words. But there was something about the timing of the answer, the strain behind it, a sense that the ship and her crew were fighting a battle they were slowly losing. Outside, the waves kept climbing. Some later would say they may have reached 25-30 feet, with rogue waves even higher. To the men aboard, they were just terrible, towering walls of water, slamming again and again, as if the lake were trying to knock the ship out of existence. Sometime after 7 p.m., the storm reached new fury. Snow closed in again, and even the lights of the Anderson vanished into the grey-black curtain. Communication continued, but shorter now, more strained. Everyone was tired. Everyone was cold. Everyone had the same goal: just make it to Whitefish Bay, where the water was calmer, the shore closer, the danger less. At 7:10 p.m., the Anderson checked once more. "Fitzgerald, how are you doing?" McSorley answered, with the same steady voice that had carried all day. "We are holding our own." Those were the last words anyone ever heard from the Edmund Fitzgerald. Moments later, no one knows exactly how many, the Anderson's radar screen blinked. Where there had been two moving blips, one behind the other, there was now only one. At first, they thought it was a glitch. Radar had been unreliable all day. Maybe she'd slipped behind a wave, maybe the signal had flickered. They tried to raise the Fitzgerald again. No answer. Again. Only static. The Anderson's crew stared out into the storm as if their eyes could somehow pierce the night and hail and snow to find the missing giant. There was nothing, no lights, no shadow, no flare, just the roar of wind and water and the cold knowledge settling into their stomachs. Somewhere out there, in that black, raging water, the Edmund Fitzgerald was gone. News of the missing ship spread quickly across the lakes that night, across radio waves, across harbors, into homes where families listened with mounting dread. Rescue vessels braved the storm, cutting through the monstrous waves, sweeping searchlights over the surface of Lake Superior. They found bits of debris, an empty lifeboat, foam tossed around like driftwood, but there were no survivors. All 29 men aboard the Fitzgerald were lost. In the days that followed, divers and investigators would find the ship in two great pieces on the bottom of Lake Superior, broken and resting in the cold darkness far below the surface. But on that night, November 10th, 1975, it wasn't theories that mattered. What mattered was the storm. What mattered was a ship that had sailed those waters for years, trusted and admired, suddenly taken in a single terrible moment. What mattered were the families waiting at docks, staring at the sea, as if will alone could bring their loved ones home.
The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down of the big lake they call Gitchagumi. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead when the skies of November turn gloomy. With a load of iron ore, 26,000 tons more than the Edmund Fitzgerald weighed empty. That good ship and true was a bone to be chewed when the gales of November came early. The ship was the pride of the American side, coming back from some mill in Wisconsin.